Hello. That's the best way to start an intro is when you accidentally mute yourself. This is live on the fly podcasting, everybody. Hello. Welcome in to the Pump Fake. Jarrett Bailey here with you as always. Joining me today is my good friend from CBS Sports. Be sure to check out Pushing the Pile. JP Acosta, rocking, is that a Tiger Woods hat? It's a great hat.
Yes, Tiger Woods.
Great hat. Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
It's going good. It's going good. We're in the big swing of things when it comes to NFL draft content. We got the combine next week. We got the draft in a couple months. Like, we are really getting towards the finish line, especially with the league year coming around to start.
Yeah, we got new league year beginning in less than a month. I think tampering is the 9th. New league year officially begins on the 11th. So yeah, within a few weeks, we're going to see some notable names and some new places. So that's what JP and I will be focusing on today. Is those new names, or sorry, those names potentially going to new places, and maybe some will stay, maybe some will get traded. A bunch of different stuff that could happen. But let's start off. The biggest name of this class, I would say, is Trey Hendrickson, edge rusher from Cincinnati. The past few years with Trey have been so odd, right? Where there's been this constant, like, public bickering with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's ended up staying there each of the past 2 seasons. I would highly doubt we see it for a third year. And there's a few teams that he's been strongly connected to. The one that I put down that I'd like to see the most is the Detroit Lions. There's been, a lot of people trying to connect that dot and hoping to see it happen for the past couple seasons. Obviously, it hasn't happened, but defensively for Detroit, if you get Trey Hendrickson on the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson, you get one of the better pass rushing duos in the NFL, at least on paper. The big thing is, can Trey Hendrickson stay healthy? He had a lot of injuries last year that kept him out of a good number of games. But when healthy, he is one of the best edge rushers in football, and going back to 2024, led the NFL in sacks. So if he goes to Detroit, I think defensively they obviously get a lot better, which is something that over the past 2 seasons they've had a little bit of struggles with. A couple years ago was a lot of injuries, and then they struggled this past season down the stretch. But if Detroit can land Trey Hendrickson, I'd love to see what that duo looks like.
I'm a little hesitant with the Detroit fit for Trey Hendrickson, mainly because Hendrickson, like you said, is getting a little older. He's got more nicks when it comes to injuries. And I also don't think he's as high level of a run defender as they would want him to be. So you're looking for a guy who can basically, with Hendrickson, you're looking for a guy who he can come in and go get you a bucket in pass rush situations. And you need to have guys who can sort of take some hits off them early down so you can rotate them in. I actually think the Colts makes the most sense. With Lou Anarumo as former defensive coordinator, there's a lot of familiarity within the scheme. And I just think that without DeForest Buckner, the Colts pass rush loses a lot of teeth. According to Sports Info Solutions, with DeForest Buckner on the field, they have a 41.9% pressure rate. Without him on the field, it's 36.3%. They lose a little bit of teeth when it comes to their pass rush without DeForest Buckner on the field. And with Buckner still sort of nursing that neck injury, I do think they need somebody who can win in individual situations, sort of take some attention off Leatu Latu. And I think Henderson makes the most sense there.
Yeah, and obviously the connection with Lou makes the most sense in terms of he was there with him in Cincinnati. And if you can get, similar with Detroit, if you can get Leatu Latu and Trey Hendrickson on the same defensive line, things would certainly look better for the Colts in that spot. And the Colts, like, I don't know, what do you make of them as a whole right now, roster-wise? Because they trade away, a big hoard for Sauce Gardner. Are they going to bring back Daniel Jones? Obviously dealing with the Achilles, it kind of seems like the direction that they're wanting to go. And if they do that, when's he going to be healthy? What do you just make of the Colts going into 2026 from, a far out lens?
I feel like the Colts are the perfect team of, like, good, but I don't think they're good enough. Like, it's risky to think that you can get another year of what Daniel Jones did last season before he got hurt. And again, this is an Achilles injury, so you're going to not have him for at least the first half of the season.
Right.
But I do also think that if you can get Alec Pierce back, if you can make a move for Trey Hendrickson, I think that'd be really good in turning up the pass rush a little bit. And I think if you have Pierce, you can keep that offensive nucleus together, because without Pierce, that depth in the receiver room takes a massive hit. So I'm curious what happens with Anthony Richardson as well, because I do think he could get them a lot of value when it comes to a trade scenario. But I do think they're a classic team of like, I want to believe in them, but it feels like this team is still like missing something to get them over the hump.
Yeah, they feel like what's a good comp for them, like other sport wise, like the like early 2010s, like Memphis Grizzlies with like Tony Allen and Mike Conley, like that era of games. It's like, yeah, they're good. They'll be a playoff team at their best, but are they going to be able to be like an actual threat? There's talks about Michael Pittman potentially being a cap casualty as well. This gave him a big deal a couple years ago. Will Alec Pierce come back? And if they can't retain some of those pieces, Jonathan Taylor gets another year older. Like, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of questions about Indianapolis. And I admire the fact that they got ballsy and gave up so much for Sauce. Like, I can appreciate a team going all in and trying something, even if it doesn't work out. And we'll see what happens with them going forward. What's another name that you're going to be paying attention to in terms of free agents and where you think their best fit would be?
Tyler Linderbaum, Ravens center. I don't think they're going to franchise tag him. I think the Ravens are going to let him test free agency, because last season was not his best season. I think he had some struggle anchoring. I think his communication was a little bit poor between, of course, Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Falele, which, again, that might be more of an issue of Voorhees and Falele, but you could tell that Linderbaum was losing a step a little bit. And I wonder if you reset the market for him. Do you pay him $20+ million? Creed Humphrey is the highest paid center in the NFL right now, and he's at $18 million a year. Do you reset the market for Tyler Linderbaum? I'm curious who makes that move for him. I think the best team would be the Chargers, because his movement skills are still there. He does struggle again with power, but he does still have the ability to move out in space. And with Mike McDaniel bringing his offense to LA, they need a focal point of that. A focal point of Dolphins offense, is having that pivot, that center who can move and get out to the second level, like we saw with Aaron Brewer last season. Yeah. So I do think Linderbaum makes the most sense there. And with the Chargers having as much cap space as they do, they should go all in. Go see if they can make a splash.
Yeah, I think that the other Harbaugh brothers is a team to watch for here too, in the New York Giants. Obviously, the connective tissue between John Harbaugh and Tyler Linderbaum. Harbaugh's the one who drafted him back in Baltimore. Yeah, with the Ravens and their offensive line, it's gone through decent amount of cosmetic changes over the past couple seasons, and Linderbaum's kind of been that anchor in the middle. If they do lose Tyler Linderbaum, what do they do to replenish the hole that he leaves behind?
I think this is a good year for interior offensive linemen in this draft. I do think if Linderbaum does walk, the Ravens are moving their offense to a little bit more wide zone, outside zone base, which is all hypothetical, coming from Declan Doyle, who was the offensive coordinator for Chicago Bears this past season, but did not call plays. So you're thinking it's going to be a little bit more wide zone, because that's what the Bears majored in offensively this season when they really turned it around. So guys like Connor Lew, from Auburn, he's coming off a major lower body injury, but I do think he'd be a nice fit, and he's really good when he was healthy. I think a guy like Logan Jones from Iowa, again, if you want to go to the Iowa center pipeline once again for the Ravens, again, he knows what he's good at. He doesn't really have the play strength or the anchor that you would like, but he's a great mover, and he knows how to operate at center. So I do think this is a good interior offensive line class for the Ravens. I think that's the way they address it. And if they do go that way, I do think they try and get some experienced guards around him, like guys like David Edwards in free agency.
Yeah, the Bills have a couple guys, and Connor McGovern and David Edwards, that they got to figure out which one are they going to try to bring back. Financially for them, it's going to be very hard to bring back both of them, and I don't think that that's what they're going to end up doing. Braden Smith, another offensive lineman name to watch. I think Matt Bowen of ESPN labeled the Houston Texans as a good landing spot for him, and just considering, especially at the beginning of the season, what the Texans offensive line looked like, not a bad fit there.
Yeah, and I think Smith at this point, like, he has the play strength, he has physicality to go and win on those duo blocks that they like to run. That's sort of how the Texans sort of revamped their offense finishing out the season. And really, it's just you need 5 competent starters up front. if you're Houston. You have Ariante Ursary, who looks like he's going to be playing left tackle for the long haul unless they draft a guy and move Ursary to right tackle. I think you have your center, whether that be Jake Andrews, Juice Scruggs. I do think you have a center there. You have Titus Howard available. You just need to be able to get multiple guys up front that you know can work together as a unit. You need some quality starters, and I think Braden Smith is a quality starter.
Yeah. Let's stick with the offense, though, because we brought up Alec Pierce. I think the Patriots are a team that you got to circle in terms of that being a fit. We saw it, especially in the playoffs, but the lack of go and get it type of guy, and the receivers that they have sparingly throughout the season would have big games. We saw Kayshon Boutte go on a little bit of a run where he had a few big games, but Kayshon Boutte, not a guy that's going to keep defensive coordinators up at night. When you look at what Alec Pierce has done over the past couple seasons, where he is proven to be one of the best deep threats in the game, if you can get Drake May, a guy like that, as well as maybe one more piece, because Stephon Diggs is, only getting older and kind of aging out of that, wide receiver one role. If you can get Alec Pierce to kind of be your number 2, number 3, and have him just, considering what he's done throughout his career, which is major in the deep ball, and bring in somebody else, whether that be via an A.J. Brown trade, whether it be, if they want to roll the dice with a Brandon Ayuk trade as well, kind of revamp this receiving room, at least the top of it. I think Kyle Williams is a good rotational player. They got a lot out of Pop Douglas as well, but I think you really need some guys who, if we're making a starting lineup, who's the star that you go to? You got to get at least one of those guys that can go make some splash plays for you consistently.
And I think the fit with Pierce for the Patriots makes sense because Pierce, outside of being arguably the best deep ball receiver in the NFL, he's grown a lot when it comes to creating separation on over routes, crossers. That's something where you want to target him over the middle of the field. He's grown a lot in that area. The issue is he's not as consistent of a separator on the outside when it comes to like vertical playing. Like you need to go get a bucket. You need like a stop route on 3rd and 6. You need to get 7 yards. I don't think Alec Pierce is going to do that, but I think he sort of amplifies, like you said, what Matt Collins and Kayshon Boutte did for Drake May. It's like you sort of like take Kayshon Boutte and Matt Collins and you combine them together and they go Super Saiyan, you get Alec Pierce. But I do think they need a little bit more juice when it comes to separation, and you hope that Kyle Williams becomes that, but we're hoping for a 3rd-round rookie to become that. So I do think they could – first of all, I don't think Alec Pierce is leaving Indianapolis in free agency.
Oh, okay.
But I do think that if he does, New England does make a lot of sense, but they still would need to address that receiver room in a big way because Stephon Diggs also might not be around on the team for much longer.
Right. Let's stick with the Colts real quick, though, because Stephen Holder reporting today that it's, it's a matter of when, not if, Anthony Richardson requests a trade. And for both parties, it just makes sense to move in a different direction. We talked about Daniel Jones probably still going to be their guy there if they bring him back. Riley Leonard played pretty well, all things considered, when he was looked upon in the final weeks of the season. So however long Daniel Jones is going to be out, I think it's fair to assume that Riley Leonard would be the guy to step in those shoes until he's ready to get back, which leaves Anthony Richardson in no man's land. And with that being said, a trade makes sense. Is there a landing spot or landing spots that you think would make the most sense for him?
The Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
That's the first team I always think of with Anthony Richardson. And of course, it goes off of sort of the post-game interaction Kevin O'Connell had with Anthony Richardson last season and how much the Vikings loved Richardson in the pre-draft process of 2023, just couldn't move up to take him because the Colts are going to be fine taking him at 5. But I do think when it comes to potential and the athletic upside of Anthony Richardson, it makes the most sense for him to go to Minnesota and see if you can figure it out there under Kevin O'Connell. I mean, if you want to compare him to J.J. McCarthy, they are very similar in terms of guys that just need reps to just learn how to play the quarterback position at the NFL level. But are you more willing to let the guy who is 6'5", 250 and can throw the ball a mile and also run faster than anybody on the field be the guy that you let go get reps over J.J. McCarthy, who was sort of just average in everything? I think the Vikings make the most sense. If you want to go long-term play, the Rams will make a lot of sense. Just to let Richardson sit behind Matthew Stafford. They did bring in Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive advisor or assistant this season, which I think leans more towards they're going to get more gap scheme, they're going to get more RPOs, and they're going to get more QB run game in their offense moving forward. I'm not saying Matthew Stafford's going to be like pulling QB keepers at 38 years old, but I do think it could be really fun if Richardson does end up as the quarterback with Kingsbury and McVay sort of mind melding their offenses together. And the last team, I was a little bit more with it when Arthur Smith was the coordinator, but I think the Steelers make sense. Yeah. It's just like they're going to be out of position to draft a quarterback anyway, because if you bring back Aaron Rodgers, you're probably signing yourself up for wild card exit once again. So you're going to be out of the QB sweepstakes. But I think Richardson gives them upside play. And if you're really considering, like, if you trade a draft pick this year for Anthony Richardson, would you rather have any non-Mendoza quarterback in this year's draft class or Anthony Richardson? I do know which guy I'm going to take.
I do too. And I think, as a Steelers fan, that's the route I want them to go. And, my normal co-host, Todd Haley's kind of pushed back on that a little bit. But when you look at what just happened in the NFL and Sam Darnold turning things around in the right situation, I'm not going to sit here and say that Anthony Richardson has an elite ceiling, but a guy who's 6'5", 250, who can throw it a mile and a half and run through everybody. I like my odds of getting a guy like that and trading, say, a fourth round pick for him rather than spending that pick on a guy like a Garrett Nussmeier or a Drew Aller or somebody of that ilk, where for all intents and purposes, it's probably going to be a wasted pick because I just don't know what there is with those guys. With Richardson, the physical talent is there. He's a specimen of an athlete. And if Mike McCarthy is the, quarterback guru that he fancies himself to be, that's a great project to have in Anthony Richardson, especially if Aaron Rodgers does come back, where you give Richardson a year under Aaron Rodgers, you probably move off Mason Rudolph in that case. And if you want to go with a quarterback room of Rodgers, Richardson, and Will Howard, and then set yourself up for a 2027 quarterback battle between Richardson and Howard, then, there's worse places you can be. I would rather take the chance on Richardson than draft a guy in the middle of the draft who the likelihood of him working out is much lower than Richardson working out. So I'm completely on board with it. I know a lot of Steelers fans are against that, but I'm completely on board with it.
It makes sense just because, again, Anthony Richardson is probably better than any other quarterback you're going to draft this year.
Right.
And of course, the jury's still out about the 2027 draft class, but you'd rather let that guy get a shot and see what happens. It's, again, very similar to the Justin Fields trade, where the Bears traded him to Pittsburgh just to see what you got. And if it works, it's great. You got a quarterback. If it doesn't, you don't have to sign that fifth-year option. You can just let him walk, and you're perfectly fine. So I do think it would make a lot of sense for Steelers to do it, but in my head, the dream is Minnesota.
I think in Anthony Richardson said the dream is probably Minnesota too. Just to get, like you said, with KOC, have some amount of time with a guy like that who's helped a lot of quarterbacks over the past few seasons. So I think that does make the most sense. As like I said, as a Steelers fan, and as much as I like Aaron Rodgers and am happy with the past year in terms of, hey, they won the division. I think he exercised a lot of personal demons and proved to himself that he can still help a team win and get to the postseason. I just don't know what else he has to give in his 22nd year, where anytime there's any amount of pressure, that ball is getting dirted and that play is dead. I would much rather give it a go with an Anthony Richardson who, when pressure gets there, he'll throw a guy off him and run. Again, love Aaron. Happy that I got to have a year to root for him as the quarterback of, my favorite team. But I think I'm okay on a second season of Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. Let's look a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. One of the top corners, if not the top corner in this class, is Alontae Taylor from the New Orleans Saints. I think the Washington Commanders make a lot of sense here. You look at their secondary group. I appreciate the swing. We talked about it earlier. I appreciate a team that takes swings. They traded for Marshawn Lattimore a couple seasons ago. He was injured when they traded for him, didn't really play well in the half season that he spent there, nor did he look good last year. I think bringing in a guy like Alontae Taylor to go along with Mike Sainristil, who is better suited as that nickel guy, would go a long way to help their defensive secondary and give them a guy who's proven to be, a very good number one corner.
I also think a team like the Seahawks makes a lot of sense. And when you look at Alontae Taylor, he has inside out versatility. He's one of the best blitzing corners in the NFL. I think it was 2024 where he had like 5 sacks. Like that's sort of unprecedented, excuse me, for a cornerback. So I do think that Alontae Taylor makes a lot of sense in Washington, where they bring in Durante Jones, the former pass game coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. You're hoping that you bring that similar Brian Flores style of defense, and that's where Alontae Taylor probably fits best. Sort of the I wouldn't say weird, but the amoeba sort of structure of that defense, and the way that he blitzes, I think, could be really weaponized there. I also think Minnesota makes a lot of sense if you're just trying to hopefully get him on a team-friendly deal, because Minnesota is way over the cap. But I like Washington. I like Seattle. I think Los Angeles, the Rams, makes a lot of sense as well.
Your boy Devin Lloyd is going to be a free agent. A, do you think he leaves Jacksonville? B, even if you do think that, let's say he does leave Jacksonville, where's he going?
I do think he leaves Jacksonville because I would not let him leave Jacksonville. Me personally, if I were James Gladstone, I pay Devin Lloyd. But I do think that he's going to command north of $20 million a year. And the highest paid linebacker in the NFL right now is Fred Warner at $22 million. Roquan Smith makes $20 million. And then you get into the teens with Tremaine Edmonds, Zach Bond, like that. You hope to get Devin Lloyd around the 17, 18 range. But if he's going over 20, I do think the Jaguars let him walk. And if he does walk, I do think, once again, the Commanders makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Again, when you think about what Durante Jones wants to bring, Devin Lloyd has the size. He has the ability as a blitzer. I think he was one of a few players last season with multiple interceptions and multiple pressures in a single season. So I think you have that versatility from an off-ball linebacker spot, and he has grown so much in his game that I think with the way that Minnesota was able to weaponize their fronts, moving Eric Wilson down to the line of scrimmage, playing Blake Cashman on the edge, you were able to retain some of that front structure that you want while also not having to move bigger bodies onto the field. So I think Washington makes a lot of sense for Devin Lloyd.
Anybody in who's proven to be a capable guy in coverage and has that versatility at that position, I think would thrive with Washington, especially what they need at the linebacker position right now. Bobby Wagner, certainly on the older end. Has he retired yet? I feel like that's got to be coming at some point. Frankie Louvu had a really nice 2024, not as good in 2025. So they could probably use a little bit of a change of scenery at that position. Jaquan Brisker, the Bears safety, I think is one of the more notable names to pay attention to. One of the more versatile guys, very good in the box, very good. He's got 7 sacks in his first 4 seasons. So a guy that they utilized in a bunch of different ways, but also very good in coverage. Not to make everything about the Steelers, but they've got 2 safeties on the roster right now, and that's Deshaun Elliott and Sebastian Castro, who was a undrafted free agent out of Iowa. So they certainly need help at the position. I would be very okay with Jaquan Brisker landing there. Is there another spot that you could see him going?
I would also offer the Buffalo Bills. I think he offers some versatility, like you said. Can play the deep half, can also play off the roof in quarters. And with Jim Leonard bringing sort of a new style of defense to Buffalo, they need some guys with juice in that secondary.
Jaquan Brisker has juice.
They need guys with athleticism in the secondary. You cannot keep trotting Jordan Poyer. You can't keep trotting out guys like DeMar Hamlin. Yeah. You can't keep putting those guys out there. And I don't think Jordan Hancock looked like he was ready yet for true starting time next to Cole Bishop. So I think with Bishop and with Jaquan Brisker, you have guys who can wear multiple hats. If you want to play Cole Bishop in the deep half, or if you want to play him as your center fielder, you can. If you want to play Brisker as center field, let Bishop play close to the box, you can. But I do think they need guys who can wear multiple hats, and I think Brisker can really do that. I also think Jacksonville makes sense, especially because Andrew Winger is going to be a free agent. Antonio Johnson, former 5th-round rookie, had some highs and lows, really came on as the season ended. Eric Murray also could be a cap casualty. They're looking to upgrade their secondary, especially at safety, sort of hoping that Caleb Branshaw becomes the guy they thought he would be. But I do think Brisker makes a lot of sense there as well.
Yeah. I love what Jaquan Brisker brings to the table. And as you know, the local Josh Allen like super fan and whatnot, going to Buffalo would be very happy with that. Reek Woolen, we haven't talked about Reek Woolen yet. I think Philadelphia would make a lot of sense opposite of Quinion Mitchell. Would really kind of just let them, specialize in what Cooper DeJean wants to do and just keep him more so back at safety. They brought in Adoree Jackson this past season, didn't really work out in that role. So I think bringing in a Reek Woolen to pair with Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean on the back end would make for a very dangerous secondary. What say you about Reek Woolen?
I wonder how much money he's going to command, because Reek Woolen quietly has been very good for the Seahawks. Yeah. And if he wants to go win another Super Bowl, he'd probably be best staying with the Seahawks.
Yeah.
But I think the Raiders makes the most sense. They have the second most cap space in the NFL. Their cornerback room is very thin. And because they're keeping the same like defense structure, pass game very similar by promoting their former defensive line coach to defensive coordinator, I think they need some impact players. They want length in that secondary. Reek Woolen has a lot of length. He's played really well. He's grown a lot in his time in the NFL, and I think the Raiders could use a true like CB1. So I think Reek Woolen probably gets a lot of money from the Raiders.
All right, some other names that I have listed that we haven't touched on yet. Kenneth Walker sticking with Seattle. I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas City made a move here. I've seen, other people say that Travis Etienne would make a lot more sense considering that he's a little bit more pass game versatile than what Kenneth Walker is. But if I'm the Chiefs, man, like you need a dude who's just going to go in and give you some power from that position. They haven't really had that in a while. They kind of had a glimpse of it at the beginning of Isaiah Pacheco's career, but injuries kind of slowed that down. I think if you want a guy that's really just going to establish a really good ground game for them, Kenneth Walker makes a lot of sense to go to Kansas City. They really have lacked that over the past couple seasons, and the vast majority of their run game has just been, gun run and RPO stuff that hasn't worked. Get yourself a Kenneth Walker. Eric Bieniemy's comeback, I think that's going to be huge as well to really help reestablish this run game. If you get Kenneth Walker, that's the cherry on top.
So I would offer that Kenneth Walker might actually be a worse fit, because Kenneth Walker like flourishes more on duo, where he's getting upfield as quickly as possible. And I think that with what the Chiefs need, they need somebody with explosiveness, with juice in the running and receiving game. So they flirted with Breece Hall at the trade deadline last season. I think they go get Breece Hall in the offseason. I think that's the move that they make, because it just makes too much sense. He is a big play waiting to happen. He's still really young. He was one of the youngest players coming out of his draft. I believe he's going to be 24.
That's bizarre.
Season, 24, 25. Let me check just to make sure. But he just makes a lot of sense in terms of what they need. He is 24. He's 24 years old. So he just makes sense in terms of explosiveness, the juice that we talked about. But with Kenneth Walker, I actually think the better team here fit-wise is the Carolina Panthers. I think he gives them the best blend of what Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard were. And we don't know if Jonathan Brooks is going to be ready once again because of another knee injury. And with Rico Dowdle being a free agent, very quietly, the Panthers did not have a lot of speed on offense. And I think Kenneth Walker gives them some explosiveness, gives them some juice. And I think that it makes a lot more sense for the Panthers to go get Kenneth Walker than for the Chiefs, because the Chiefs probably really want Breece Hall.
If Travis Etienne leaves, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars brought in Rico Dowdle. I think that could be something interesting to watch. Do you have a spot for Rico Dowdle in mind?
I actually do think it's the Jaguars if they don't address it in the draft, because what Rico Dowdle does is he wins with vision, and I think he wins between the tackles. He's not explosive. He's not going to be super dynamic as a runner or receiver, but he's just consistent. He can grind out 4 and 5 yard runs. Think of it as Rashad White, when Liam Cohen had Rashad White, and then Basile Tootin is your Bucky Irving. So you have that dynamic of Dowdle, Tootin, LaQuint Allen on passing downs. I think you create a really nice like group there. And you also could probably get Dowdle for some value, because Jags are right up against it when it comes to cap space. And you do also have to extend Parker Washington. You have to extend Brenton Strange. You're going to extend Trayvon Walker. You're going to have a 5th-year option for Anton Harrison. There's a lot of stuff coming up for the Jaguars and paying your own guys. So I do think it's a quiet offseason for the Jaguars in terms of bringing in outside noise, or not outside noise, but outside players. But
Sure.
I wouldn't mind seeing them like get a little value deal for Rico Dowdle.
What do you think happens with Brian Thomas Jr.? Because we've seen Parker Washington really come out of his shell and had a phenomenal year. They got an extraordinary value from Jacoby Myers. They already extended him with the way that he played after they acquired him from the Raiders. And you can never have too many weapons in the NFL. But with a receiver room of Washington, Thomas, Myers, I guess Travis Hunter too, depending on how they use him. It looks like they're going to use him more on defense, though, which is kind of the big question, right?
Yes. So because Travis Hunter is going to be full-time corner and part-time receiver next season, which is exactly what I knew. I thought he would be a full-time corner, part-time receiver last season because he was just better at corner. They don't trade Brian Thomas Jr. unless it's a Godfather offer because he is still, 23 years old?
Very young.
He's still very young. He still has an 1,000-yard season under his belt. And look at the offense without Brian Thomas Jr., and you can tell that nobody's threatened by the speed on the Jaguars team outside of Brian Thomas Jr. He opens up a lot of lanes. He sort of gets the sacrificial X routes. He gets a lot of the
clear routes.
Yeah, he gets the routes for the love of the game. You're running posts for the love of the game. You're running go routes because you love being out here and playing football, because you're clearing up space for Jacoby Myers on dagger. You're clearing up space for Parker Washington on third down and third down situations. So I think he matters a lot to this offense. And I think Liam Cohen and James Gladstone understand that. And because their cornerback room is so thin with Buster Brown, Greg Newsome, both entering free agency, and you have to play Travis Hunter at corner, he's going to stick around for a long time.
Yeah, and like I said, you can never have enough weapons in the NFL, and like we know that injuries are going to happen, and that they happened to Brian Thomas Jr. this past year. And so if one of these guys does go down and you traded away Brian Thomas, then automatically your offense takes a big hit. So I think having a nice like three-headed group of Thomas, Washington, Jacoby Myers, as well as the tight end group with Strange, Jacksonville's going to be perfectly fine, and I think they hold on to him as well. Rashid Shaheed, another guy who did get traded this past season at the deadline, is a free agent. I think he stays in the NFC West, but I think the 49ers are a team that would make sense. They love their gadget guys, and they had one of the best gadget guys ever in Deebo Samuel. I think bringing in a Rashid Shaheed who can give you so much as a returner, as a receiver. I'm sure Kyle can find a way to get him the ball in these, behind the line of scrimmage type things that they used to do with Deebo. And looking at their receiving core, Brandon Ayuk's not going to be there. Ricky Pearsall has been consistently injured. Juwan Jennings is also a free agent. So I think bringing in Rashid Shaheed would be a big boost to that offense.
I think he stays in Seattle. They have the 6th most cap space in the NFL. And I think his vertical element and his threat of speed opens up a lot for JSN. He also was a really important return man. And he really made that.
He had what, like three special teams touchdowns this year? Like
I think he did. Good. I think he had one against the Falcons. He had one against the 49ers in the playoffs.
And one against the Rams.
And one against the Rams. So I do think he matters a lot to this team because they have enough cap space. I think they pay Shaheed. I'm not going to say they're going to break the bank for him, but I do think they extend Shaheed and keep him in Seattle.
I think Spotrack's like market value for him is like a 3 years, about $16 million a year. 3 years, $48 million, somewhere in that neighborhood is what they've labeled it as. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think the Tennessee Titans need to be all over that. Wan'Dale Robinson, quietly, you look at the past 2 years of his just numbers wise, you would think that he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. And it's not to say that he's bad or anything, but when Malik Neighbors goes down, when you don't have a lot of other weapons in that offense, he just got all the targets from Jackson Dart and from Jameis Winston. So I think Wan'Dale Robinson, if he goes to Tennessee, along with another name that they would bring in, I think he's a very good number 2. And if they can bring in like a really good number 1 to go with that, that would be really good for Cam Ward in that offense. And we'll see what it looks like with Brian Dable. There's a little bit of connective tissue there. Brian Dable was obviously with the Giants with Wan'Dale Robinson. So I'm excited. What do you think of their new logo and helmets that are reported, by the way? I think they look pretty cool.
I hate sort of the modernization of it,
I
and
do too.
it feels really. It's very funny that they keep going all in on this Oilers thing when you were not the real Oilers. But I mean, if you want to be the fake Oilers, that's perfectly fine. It looks all right. I'm not going to sit here and say like it stinks, but they could lean more into the Titan aspect. Like you can lean more into the Greek and Roman like aspects of it with the logo. It just feels sort of bland, but the colors make it pop.
I like the colors for. I agree, though. I think the circle logos largely suck. If they just did like the sword part of it with the Oilers colors, I would be even more on board with it. But seeing like the mock-ups of it, I think that the uniforms will look really cool. It's just the logo kind of didn't stick the landing. But Wan'Dale Robinson to Tennessee, a yay or nay?
I like it. I kind of like Wan'Dale Robinson to San Francisco more
Mm,
because Wan'Dale Robinson, yes, he has been very productive for the Giants. He also doesn't average more than 2 yards per route run.
it's
Like
absurd.
he is not running routes downfield. And
Mhm.
if you think about the Kyle Shanahan offense, is sort of the side to side stuff that they do. And without having George Kittle, you need somebody that wins after the catch. Wan'Dale Robinson can do that in spades. I think Kyle Shanahan could really draw up some really cool stuff for him, especially because they're missing sort of that Deebo Samuel aspect of the offense. And they can't continue to rely on Christian McCaffrey to do that because this might be the last time that we get 17 full games of Christian McCaffrey. So I think Wan'Dale Robinson makes a lot of sense there. I like Tennessee, but I do also want Cam Ward throwing to receivers that are over 5'9".
That's fair, and I can agree with that. I wonder I think the Bills are gonna end up cutting Curtis Samuel. I wonder if the 49ers would sign him and, like, just tell fans, "Alright, if you squint, it kinda looks like Debo," especially if they give him, like, 1 or 19 or one of the numbers that he wore there. I think that is everybody I had on my list. I'm sure that there's others that I've missed. Is there any names that we haven't touched on that you wanted to?
Adafe Owe is the
Yeah.
first one from the Chargers. I think it just makes sense to sort of he was on the Ravens, got traded to the Chargers. Let's send him back to the Ravens. Like let's just run this thing back. I do think that he's still incredibly young. He has the pass rush upside, and I do think he offers a little bit more as a run defender than any of the Ravens edge rushers for real. So I think the Ravens go back and get him because again, his former defensive coordinator is now the head coach of the Ravens. So I think Adafe Owe makes sense there in Baltimore.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We didn't touch on it was Quay Walker. We didn't touch on either. One of the better linebackers in this class. Intrigued to see what Green Bay does here. They have their cash situation isn't the best, so it's going to be hard for me to see him going back to Green Bay. Is there a spot that you could really see him thriving in?
I'm going to throw out two names for one spot because they need help at both.
Mhm.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers
Mm.
for both Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean. I
Oh, okay.
think if you provide like if you just watch the Bucks last season, their linebacker group was slow. It was a little old with Levante David still like Levante David can play until he decides he doesn't want to. But they were a little bit slow, they're a little bit old, and I think they just lack juice. And I think Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker both offer juice. Walker's much bigger, and I think he has a little bit more range and coverage. But Dean is a better blitzer, I think. So if you really want to turbocharge the Todd Bowles defense in a pivotal year for Todd Bowles, I think either of those guys makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I love that. I think to put a bow on this, we can touch on maybe some quarterbacks that could be on the move, not necessarily free agents, but the Kyler Murrays of the world, the Malik Willises of the world, who are likely to be playing elsewhere and the best fits for them. Kyler Murray is so intriguing to me because if you're a team that needs a quarterback, like the Steelers or, like the Jets, one of these teams who needs a quarterback, like Kyler Murray has shown that he's certainly a starting capable quarterback, but there seems to be a pretty hard ceiling on him. So if you are one of these teams, how much are you willing to give up for? Where do you think Kyler Murray ends up?
The question we had to first ask is what offense works for Kyler Murray in 2026?
Yeah.
And the question sort of revolves around can Kyler Murray also regain that form of athleticism that really sort of electrified the NFL to start his career? I think as his athleticism has sort of waned, the pocket passing hasn't grown as well. And I just think the under center, like play action, drop back stuff doesn't really fit what he does.
Yeah.
But again, it sort of brings up like what offense does fit that then. So I do think if you just want to like attach a pick to him and get like a fourth in return or something. I think Miami makes a lot of sense. I think if you just swap Tua and Kyler,
That's what I was thinking, honestly. Yeah.
like,
What do you got to lose there?
there's nothing to lose there. Maybe the Browns really can't do that because they can't have two expensive quarterbacks on the roster. Like they just can't do that at this point.
Sure.
The Jets could also be pretty interesting. But again, it's sort of limited because it depends on what you think of Kyler Murray in 2026.
I think the Raiders would be maybe a team to circle if not for the Mendoza stuff. Like if they weren't picking number 1 overall and it was pretty clear that that's where they were going to go, then maybe. But I mean that path is all but set in stone right now. It feels like the market is both limited and obvious for what teams would be interested, right? It's going to be those teams that we just talked about. I don't know if Minnesota is going to be the team to do it. I think that they would probably go the Richardson route before they went the Murray route. It just feels like there's a lot of limits here in terms of where these guys can go. Like a year ago, I maybe would have said Carolina, but I think, after the season that they had and giving the Rams all they could handle in a playoff game, Bryce Young's certainly going to be the guy there going into this season. Not going to be any changes made there. So I don't know. A lot of teams who have quarterback needs, this isn't the year to look for a veteran, really.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. The veteran free agent market is very thin. So you're going to see like Malik Willis is going to get a bag from somebody because who else are you going to go get if you're a quarterback needy team but aren't going to get Fernando Mendoza?
If Malik Willis gets like a Justin Fields type deal where it's 2 years, 20 million, between 20 and 30 million guaranteed. Like I like the way that Malik Willis played when he was in, but that feels very risky to put that much faith into him.
It's reflective of the market. I think if he gets that deal, I would not pay him $20 million a year.
No,
not at all, because he's only started, I think, like 6 games,
something like that.
He doesn't have a large sample size to go off of. But I do think, like in the games that he did play, like it was a fascinating experiment. I do think he played well. There were obvious limitations. Again, Miami feels like the team to beat here because you're
Jeff Hafley, the connection,
everybody back. You're basically taking Green Bay and copy pasting it.
Yeah, it's Packers South.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if they take the shot on Malik Willis. I think again the Browns, if you're able to sort of get them on a smaller deal, the Browns make a lot of sense, especially with Todd Monken running the offense. So it just depends on which team do you think needs a quarterback that knows they can't get Mendoza.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a good place to put a bow on this. JP Acosta, my good friend. What do you have coming over on the CBS Sports side of things?
So tomorrow we're doing our podcast, Pushing the Pile, on CBS Sports Network at 12 p.m. That is noon. We're going to be talking Combine. We're going to be talking some of our favorite guys in the draft class. And just make sure to follow that. Make sure to follow Pushing the Pile on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. I also write for CBSSports.com. Make sure you look for that. But follow me on TV, basically anywhere where there's CBS is talking about football, I'm probably also there. So let's follow along, see what I'm doing.
Love it. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you're watching this, we are like skyrocketing towards 7,000 subscribers, which is very exciting. Me and Todd Haley do this a couple times a week. I do it with, my respective group of friends that you've come to know, JP, Matt Verderam, the whole ilk of folks. So please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Todd will be back later on in the week, and we'll maybe get a little update from UFL camp, see what's going on there. So appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we will be back later on. It's the Pump Fake. Take care.